IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money Upfront. Guys, we're heading into week 2 of the lockdown, and I'm sure it's been challenging for all of you, just as it's been for us. We're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules, but beg your indulgence if we slip. In the meantime, if you're looking for more stuff to listen to, might I suggest you go dive into the archives. We got over 6,000 episodes of content we've created over the last 5 years, and I'm sure there's something in there that you'd love listening to. Anyway, stay safe, and let me get you started with your show.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a new episode of Storytellers and Story Sellers. Usually on the show, you have me talking to two guests. We talk about a certain aspect of the entertainment business, and we discuss pros and cons, what's happening in the industry right now, what's making things work, what's not working, stuff like that. But then we've all encountered this coronavirus, right? And that's completely thrown all sorts of production schedules out of whack. There are no movies being made, so मेरा podcast में कैसे बनाने से ना. So what we've tried doing is come up with new formats that can be done during this lockdown, right? Lockdown-friendly formats is what I'll call it. For someone who's tuned in before, you must have heard the solo transmission episode where I give you yarn about the sports and entertainment industry. On today's episode, I want to talk to you about gender because, hey, the lockdown is a great time to talk about gender, right? And to talk about gender and content is someone that I've known for 10 years now, I think, which is insane when you really think about it, right? Say hello to Neha Vyas. Hi, Neha.
Hi.
It's a little weird and new because Neha and I have spent the last half an hour trying to figure out the technicalities behind doing all of this. So thank you so much for taking the time and being patient as we sorted out internet and technical issues. How are you doing? How are you holding up during the lockdown?
It was like the first week was driving me crazy a little bit because obviously, like I live alone. Right. So there's literally walls and stuffed toys that I'm talking to by like first week. It was a little loco.
Wow. It's a brave thing to do, man. Living alone is brave. It takes at this point when you don't know when it's going to end, right?
Yeah, but I think it's a great time for artists who are living alone to just go back to their roots, think about the kind of work they've been doing, how they want to change the face of their work, how they want to change I mean, I know it sounds a little high level, but purpose of life. Everyone sort of has something that they want to do. Right? What makes sense to you? Which is what I've
been doing. That's just great insight because, I mean, as someone who works in sort of media, entertainment, influencer, I've been wondering what is it that people will do? All these, the greatest entertainers of our generation are now sitting at home doing nothing. Right? So that's great insight. I mean, at least the responsible ones should reflect on how their art can make a change better. By way of introduction, and Neha is the co-founder of Anat?
Yeah, co-founder. I have another founder with me.
Yeah, so, and Anat is this, I'll let you do the introduction. So Neha, for our listeners, what is it that you do?
So Anat is a content collective. It's a collective because we believe that content creation is not a single person's job or a single entity's job. Content creation has to be very collaborative, and it has to bring in as much openness as it can. Our tagline is gender-free creative power. So our efforts are constantly to create performance spaces or create content that is gender-free. Now what happens
How do you mean gender-free? What does that mean?
Yeah. So actually, more often than not, we tend to use the word inclusive, right?
Sure.
But the word inclusive actually means that you're coming from a pedestal. So you had excluded someone and therefore now you're including them. Whereas in Anat, when we started, we called ourselves an open space because we are not including or excluding anyone. We exist and we are open to all. So at the inception itself, we started sort of conversing about the kind of language that we would use because we don't realize it, but the language we use plays such a huge role on society's psyche and the people who listen to us.
Absolutely.
For example, a simple thing, right? Gender pronouns. This year, the dictionary, I think Oxford or Cambridge announced the word of the year as they, right?
Right.
But how many people really understand the meaning or essence of they, right? We are known to only two primary sort of, we think of gender as binary, right? Woman,
Right.
man. The truth is that that gender goes beyond that, right? It goes, so like a friend of mine, Ishmeet, who's also a poet, she says it very interestingly that your sex is your reproductive organs,
Right.
your gender is in your head, and your sexuality is in your heart.
Right. And gender has a lot more to do with how you construct your own identity, what you like to be perceived as, what your place is in the world often has a heavy dosage of your gender being part of it. Right? So to take forward from that, and that sounds important in the current climate that we live in. And I'm not just talking about the Me Too movement, but in general, a sort of wider awareness, whether it's Shaheen Bagh, whether it's the trans rights and bill and the act. How does Anat play a role at this point? What are some of the things that you've done? And for my listeners, Neha's journey is as interesting as the output that she's part of right now. So we'll come to that in a bit. But let's talk about how Anat is taking forward the gender conversation in terms of some stuff that you might have done that we will see.
Yeah. So I think at the essence of Anat lies art and artists, right?
Right.
I've always believed that I think it's a famous quote by someone that says art cannot really start a revolution, but art can aid it, right? Yeah. And every sort of revolution or resistance had been laced by artists of that time and the voices of the artists of that time and the stories that are told.
Absolutely.
So Anat,
and they outlived the artists, the movement as well, right? Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, no, Anat's medium is storytelling. Now
Right.
that storytelling is format and form agnostic. It can be film, it can be poetry, it can be visual art, it can be photography, it can be comedy even. So and it can be live and it can be online. It can be a simple thing like getting artists connected to each other.
Sure.
Right? But yeah, the essence of Anat is in creating stories that will talk about gender without being in your face.
Sure.
Because I think the best stories are the kind of stories that are slice of life.
Sure.
That tell you something, that leave you thinking, and you go back and say, oh my God. So you've been educated, but you've also been entertained.
Absolutely. I think that balance is super important, especially, and we talk about that balance always in sort of branded storytelling. I think it's even more important when it comes to purpose-oriented storytelling, right? Because nobody likes to be talked at or preached, right? I keep going back to this instance in my life, and I think it was a point where even I felt like I grew a little bit, and it had a lot to do with educating these two boys, and I wouldn't call it educating, right? It was more like reasoning with them about it. Two boys who used to work with me back at TVF, and they used to think the word feminazi was okay to use on social media, and I was like, no, that's not okay, right? And then again, there was this entire conversation. Now, if I had someone do it for me with storytelling, right? Just why is the word feminazi not okay to use, and a 2-minute sketch about it, I had to spend 3 weeks just no. And again, you have to be gentle about it, right? Of course, there is this whole ally discourse that talks about no, men should do their own research, or everyone should kind of come pre-equipped with the knowledge and the wherewithal to sort of sort this whole gender, sexuality, identity piece in their heads. It's often...
But that's interesting, right? When you tell people that yes, they should do the research and they should go and find, they have to be able to find content
Absolutely.
that them this.
Absolutely.
So someone has to take on the mantle of creating this content.
Absolutely.
To create stories, to create ideas. Like there's this very interesting children's book which a friend of mine shared. I think I'll send you maybe the publisher's name or something a little later. Sure. A friend of mine, Ruxana, who's an artist, and she sent me this book, Gutli To Ladki Hai or something. It's about this little girl who's born as a girl who doesn't identify with the norms of what being a girl is. Right. And it's actually a children's book. It's a children's story book.
It's so powerful and moving.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Please do send me. Neha, why don't you tell us about how you got here? So I'm going to recount how I met Neha. Neha was like this. Neha, my senior from college. That sounds so quaint when you say it in your 30s, but I still went out and said it. Right?
Don't close my age.
So we were in college together, and Neha at that time was the resident director of our theatre festival. That's what you were. Yeah, and Neha was putting up a production of 30 Days of September.
No. 30 Days of September was your batch. I did Silence.
Yes. Sorry. Yours was Silence in the Court, right? Shantata Tamba Court.
Yeah.
Correct. And I auditioned to play the judge, Mr. Kashikar. I obviously didn't make it. The guy who made it looked a lot more like a judge. The mutual friend called Udav Kumar. Hi, Udav. And then I ended up doing lights on her production. It was a beautiful production. And that's kind of my first brush with me. And that was like 10 years ago, right? So after that, where did life take you, and how did you end up at Anat?
Yeah. So actually, before Maika also, like while I was in Hyderabad, I was doing a fair amount of theatre with my teacher.
How did you get into that?
So I was in a school called Nasser School, and Nasser School had a very interesting dramatic society. My journey with the stage started when I was like in the 8th grade in a boarding school. Boarding school actually gives you a lot of sort of leeway to explore, discover. Right. They do so many activities all the time and stuff. So that's, I see, like my first character was this elocution about if I were the Prime Minister of India. It was really a funny piece, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, funny times. But I think that's when I realized that stage was my sort of thing. And I had done a lot of, I was never like a studious person. I've always been like sort of extracurricular karna hai, stage pe karna hai, drama karna hai, that kind of thing, right? But yeah, so when I was in...
drama karna hai. Make it a thing, man. #drama karna hai. Please go on, sorry.
No, there is, like totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sort of, when I was in Hyderabad, also Nasser Dramatic Society, I was involved in a lot of things. And that time Vinay sir was sort of mentoring us. And I got to meet him, and he enjoyed my work, and he mentored me through those 2 years. And then after that also I kept going back to him and stuff. And then when I came to Maika, obviously Maika had a beautiful theatre society. I think every year I see Sankalp, they keep adding interesting stuff to it. So it's big in Maika, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And again, luckily, like I got to work with some fantastic seniors of mine, Siddharth, Kashan, Johan and Siddhant, who were who were directing the play. They did Final Solutions by Mahesh Dattani.
Right.
And then obviously I directed the next year. We did some interesting pieces like Manto's Khol Do. I don't think it was in your year, but then we did Silence. And the idea was I always, and then my dissertation incidentally was on use of theatre for socio-political impact.
Right. So life's like a full circle for you then, Anat, right?
Yeah, it was. And then after I quit Maika, obviously like any other middle class, Marwadi business family, I was expected to work in a corporate. And so I went ahead to work at Economic Times. I did some interesting work there. But through that period, Economic Times and then Birla Sun Life Insurance, I was doing theatre with the seniors from Maika, which is Siddharth and Kashan,
right.
Primary. And we put up like a play in Thesco and stuff.
Right.
So it was, I've always sort of been connected with theatre. However, I think in about 2013 2013, I've forgotten also. 2013 or so, I got married, and I got married to a person who didn't probably understand art or artists. And then you get into this rigmarole. In 2015, we got separated, and I decided that, okay, this is my chance. So I quit my husband, quit my job altogether by 2017. And then I actually took a year to just sort of travel. I went to visit my brother in Chicago. I lived there for a month and a half. I traveled to different places in India, and then I decided, okay, I think it was like 2018 Feb when I just sort of said, okay, now I'm going to act and I'm going to write my poetry and I'm going to do my thing. And so I started training, because I think a lot of people do away with the idea of training as actors. They think it's instinctive and all, but it doesn't work like that. Like, you have to train. Acting is like any other craft. So that's what sort of landed me in Prague. I work with the Prague Shakespeare Company.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So I worked with the Prague Shakespeare Company for about 1.5 months, and I performed at the Estate Theatre in Prague, which is where Mozart had premiered Don Giovanni. So, yeah. But that was a huge learning experience for me, because it sort of opened the entire world to me.
Right.
There was a person at the course whose name is Aiden, and I love them because they are the person who sort of opened my my idea and sensibilities of gender.
Right.
They sort of just opened up for me, because they were the first non-binary individual I met. Like, I'd heard about it, I'd read about it because I read a lot, but I met them, and just over time I was lucky to share a flat with them. Our conversations and the way they viewed the world, it really opened my eyes. It got me to rethinking the way I was looking at gender.
Sure.
Because inherently, in India especially, we are into such, we're brought up in such a patriarchal society, right? And there are such inherent. For example, for me, my dad always said कि ये मेरी बेटी नहीं है, बेटा है, right? It's such a easy thing, and I always sort of took pride in it in some sense, right? Because मैं तो, my dad says that. And then later, as you're growing up, as you're evolving, I realized that it just instilled in me this need to be a man.
It's very insidiously done also. Yeah, it's like, that conditioning is very insidious. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, and then I had a conversation with my father recently about, how he had, and he said it was only because I didn't want you to feel lesser, because I come from a Marwadi family, and he didn't want me to feel like I was lesser than any of my brothers. So his intent
was in the right place. Yeah.
But because we don't train, talk, engage on gender, he really didn't know how to make me feel better. In fact, my father sent me out to boarding school because he didn't want me to get bogged down with the conservative ideas of the environment that I was living in.
Right. No, and again, I think just before we were talking about this, a lot of people don't know how to express it in the correct third wave intersectional feminist PC culture QIA plus way, but their intent is right. Let me ask you this. So when you met Aiden, was that the time when the genesis of Anat sort of happened? Was that the confluence of gender and theatre that you were sort of...
No, I was thinking of Anat even before I went to Prague.
Right.
But I was thinking of it as a women's collective.
Sure. Understood. All right. That makes sense.
Right? I was thinking of it as, because I was very, very lucky to work with some very, very interesting teams across my career in corporate. So I was always given a voice. I didn't have to sort of, all of the organizations that I worked in, I didn't really face, sexism like on the face. I had some really great bosses. I had some really great people, but there was always that underlying thing, Maybe I was lucky because my boss was like, but I constantly saw it around me. And when I sort of quit my job and I decided to be an actor and I decided to, write, I realized that the kind of work that I want to do, the kind of stories I want to tell, they don't really exist right now.
Right.
I was craving for stories that were more real, that didn't have women being objectified or being relegated to a secondary role. So it was and I knew I had some savings, and what do I want to do with that savings now that I wasn't earning and stuff. So I had decided that I'm going to like put that in Anat, because my parents have been like really nice, supporting me financially quite a bit.
Right.
So then I went, after I came back from Prague, I was exploring on how do I want to start it, and I met Asavri. Asavri Jagashte is my co-founder for Anat. And she is a director. She's studied at the London Film School. And we started having conversations about what kind of narratives we want to tell.
Sure.
Right? She as a director, me as an actor and writer or a poet. And we found there was some synergy in the way we looked at content and what we wanted to do. And that's where essentially Anat was formed.
Understood. Let me ask you this quickly. On that note, let me ask you this quickly. You were talking about stuff that wasn't happening in India around that time, the kind of stories. What did you look at saying, okay, and while you were founding this, obviously, when you're bringing a new idea to life, right? I think something's been developing in your head. What were like 3 or 4 things that you saw happening globally that you thought, hey, that's the kind of stuff that Anat should be doing, that you and Asavri kind of synced up on and said, "Acha, pehle ye karenge."
So I think for me, it started with I discovered the Bechdel test, right?
Right.
I was like, oh my God, Indian cinema doesn't work. And then I discovered shows like Fleabag, Killing Eve. I discovered, shows like The Crown, movies like The Favourite. Like, it's been a journey, obviously.
Right.
And poetry, like poetry that, Maya Angelou writes. And
right.
And I also discovered that a lot of the poets and artists that I idealize have been, abusers. They've been like Neruda, or if you talk about Woody Allen, controversial. Yeah. So I just felt like you can't have this conversation that separates the art from the artist till we really bring up artists that are truly thinking gender free.
Sure.
Who have their heart in the right place and who understand that being a good human being and being a good artist should go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I think
and not sort of independent of each other. So yeah, I think one of the things that I remember watching Kill Bill, and I watched that film like multiple times, and I used to be like, oh my God, someday I want to do that role. Like, I want to be. And now obviously like when you go like after so many years, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much violence. Like, violence is constantly used as a trope in that film. So you grow as a person. But yeah, I think, and there are some phenomenal things being done by people. Like, Devashish Makhija has this film called Ajji. I don't know if you've seen. And I think we had him on Anat's panel, and we had this conversation with him. Why so extreme? Why is it needed to have a trope?
Right.
And he said very fairly that I'm a man, so obviously I'm going to have a male gaze, right?
Yeah. Now, for my listeners, Ajji is a movie about this Mauritian grandmother who is also a serial killer slash killer to protect her grandson or something like that, right?
Granddaughter. Gets raped by an MLA.
Exactly, right, by an MLA. Please.
And that's where the genesis of the story starts, right?
Yeah.
And Devashish's heart is like absolutely in the right place. He's one of the biggest supporters of Anat, and it really warms our heart every time. But he said that, to be able to really make that dent, I have to make people see the 10 rather than a 0, right?
Right.
But as I also started doing clowning.
Right.
So when I was clowning, I worked with Clowns Without Borders India, Clowns Without Borders Sweden, Clowns Without Borders UK. And I got a chance to visit the Rohingya camps.
Right.
camps. And I worked with women there. I performed for kids. And I realized that laughter, art, not showing violence can be a huge sort of shift in making people think. Because every time you use violence, every time you use, something jarring, it makes for a great story. It probably, sort of leaves it for a while. It's going to make you feel really sick for the next 1 week. But has it really sort of entered your subconscious in a way that it's absorbed and it's going to make you act on something? It's like we asked for the hanging of Nirbhaya's rape, or like the encounter of that encounter in Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think that death to the rapist is going to ever change the fabric of our society. The fabric of our society will change with conversations. It will change with a shift in our system, in a patriarchal system, right? Which is what we've been living for years. And you can't break that shift by, shooting a few, rapists. You have to bring that shift by educating why rape shouldn't happen.
Right.
And why nothing is an excuse for rape. Rape is, but simple things like why you shouldn't define a person's identity through their gender.
Sure.
So, like, people constantly talk about sexuality. Right. Sexuality is so personal, right? It's in your bedroom. Ideally, nobody should really care about what you're doing in your bedroom. It's your business. But gender is something that's in your face, right? You see someone and you decide, okay, this is a woman because she has breasts. This is a man because I don't see his breasts and I know he has a penis. And this is because he has short hair, because he is long. So I think we're constantly defining what we expect out of a person.
Right. Based on their gender. Based on the visualization of their gender. That's the way we kind of conventionally understand it. Let me ask you this though. And again, I stand firmly on the side of instead of sort of punitive justice as some kind of reformative justice being delivered in general. That said, do you really believe that we can move towards a better society simply by education and entertainment, and without deterrence like the punitive measures that are in place being there? Number one. And the second thing that I want to follow up quickly is, so where do you see the audience for the kind of stuff that you want to do starting out, right? Who are you creating for? So two very sort of different questions, but I think it's very important to understand from a creator's perspective, right? So first, more broader social point of view on how do you balance education and punitive measures when it comes to stuff like this. And I don't mean just rape, right? Rape is sort of a proper out there crime, right? There are several perspective changes, several layers of perspective changes that we're trying to affect here, right? That's the first one. How do you balance that out?
So, like I said at the start, that artists cannot create a revolution or resistance, but they can aid it.
Sure.
It's exactly that, right? So, when you have to make a systemic change, a mindset change, it's not going to happen through one way, right? There are going to be different ways. Like I find this guy Saket Gokhale super interesting. He's constantly filing RTI.
Yeah.
Right. I know, like Kunal Kamra is using comedy to constantly question the government. So everyone's going to find
their... to the point of parody at this point.
Yeah, but that's my point. Everyone's finding their ways to voice out, to resist, to engage in a conversation. And I think art is just our way, or content is just our way, right? Obviously, I'm not saying it's the be-all and end-all. It can't be. There are, organizations that are on the field doing some really fantastic work. Like one of the people who work with us is Shatakshi Verma. And Shatakshi works with, she's had a huge social work background. She's worked with the UN Women. She's gone to tribal areas where she's used theatre and role play to sort of train women to understand the kind of abuse or domestic violence that they are facing and then fight it. Right?
Wow,
People are doing
amazing.
ground level work like that. Right? Or like Transistence. Transistence is this organization started by 3 trans women. And they are now putting out content which is just simply talking about transness in a sense, and what that, it's not a box, because we all tend to like, how much of a difference is this going to make, right? But the fact is that it's like wo mere papa bolte boon boon se sagar bharta hai type feeling, right?
Sure.
So every drop is important. So even if like what we do at Anat is a drop or a couple of drops, I'd like to believe it's a couple of drops, it's adding to the ocean of change, right?
I hope
so that
you make many more drops. Neha, I think...
And you had a second question.
I did. Yeah, the second question, that's what I was coming to. I think the second part of what I wanted to really get at. So who are you creating for? Do you have an audience in mind when you want to tell these stories? How are you looking at reaching those audiences? I know you've done some very interesting work with the recreation of the Chilean rape song that Anat was performing at various places. But how are you looking at who are you looking at reaching, and how are you looking at sort of scaling the impact that you guys are having?
See, there are 2 ways, like my Maika education taught me, that there's the traditional way of there's the traditional way of looking at an audience, that my audience is like 21 to 36, all genders, who are my primary audience, who I want to, who are either educated or who are maybe just consuming the kind of content, different kinds of content on YouTube, and I want to reach out to them. But I like to look at the audiences, and there's a very interesting speech I heard really long ago. I think it was Reese Witherspoon. And she said that when she was starting her production house, constantly people kept saying, "Oh, but female scripts are not going to work. Like, nobody wants to see women characters taking the lead. Like, it's not going to commercially work." And she decided to go ahead and do it anyway, and they worked. Because I think if your story is compelling enough, if your content is relatable, if it's an interesting thing to hear, it'll create its own audience. Like, we are obviously doing like specific audience creation thing. Like, we do a lot of offline events curation, where we have like poetry, comedy, photography exhibitions, music, where we have a space where we have primarily non-male artists coming and performing, because they don't have enough spaces that welcome them, or spaces that make them feel safe. And over the last 1 year, we've seen a huge affinity to this, and we have people who've registered, and maybe right now, like a number of 700 or 1,000 people who've given you a WhatsApp number, and all sound small, but I think small is good, right? It starts somewhere. And we have an artist database, which I think is huge. Like, our artist database is huge. So I think
that was the part that felt most compelling to me when we first talked about Anat, was, hey, at least here's someone who's looking out at art from a gender perspective and creating the groundwork for it. Because I think across the board in the talent and entertainment industry right now, that's the drive we're at, right? So I think the first step towards more representation, better content, is going to be this sort of effort at formalization. I think there's obviously a long way to go. Quick check, what do you think brands are looking at right now? I'm sure you met a few brands, and without naming them, just there's a smile on your face about that. But yeah, how are brands looking at this right now?
See, I think, I'll be honest, I think brands are far more open to conversations around sexuality than conversations around gender. And I understand because when you talk about gender and breaking gender norms, you're actually it's a direct attack on patriarchy. Right. So it is very difficult for a brand to take a really strong stand on it, especially in the times that we live in today and in the country that and the kind of politics we are all
and
experiencing.
The kind of sort of constant threat of social and physical real life backlash, right? That people live in these spaces.
Yeah, but I feel like I think there are brands who are trying to take subtle steps and trying to really talk about gender, and that's why it's important that the stories don't become accusatory. They are not accused or addicting, but they're stories that are relating, sharing. They are about experiences. They're about realities, because I think that's the best way to portray or engage, right? When something leaves a question in your head, like if I have to go research, like going back to that thing about how people say that if you're an ally you really should do your own research. So if I do something, it makes me go back and want to research. I mean that's a huge win for us and for a brand. And like is it Red Label that does a lot of these ads which have trans individuals in it, right?
The spag band, unfortunately named. But still
and there was that ad, right? So, and like even films like Thappad or Article 15. Now, see, when I see a film like that, because of the space that I come from, I'll probably find something that's wrong. And if you want to critique something, you'll always find a loophole. Like, for example, Article 15, everyone sort of spoke about, Brahmanical hero being the hero, right? But I think it takes courage to actually step up and make a film about it. Right?
Definitely.
So, I was watching that film and my mother saw that scene where that man's coming out of a manhole and she's like, oh my God, ye abhi bhi hota hai. And just that moment of realization for her, it meant a lot, right? There is a small, little, acknowledgement of her privilege that she had in that moment, and that's important. So we need more and more stories like that, and we can't be perfect. We'll never be perfect, till we really stand up and talk about it and say, ki abhi isko we have to take it head on, right? But I know that there are people doing that. But the purpose of art has to be to get those people support in numbers.
Right. Of course. I think you put all aspects of that very, very wonderfully. Talked about how it needs to garner support, how it needs to leave you with a question, not talk at you. I think all of these things are. I think as more and more creators sort of tend to realize this, we'll see more and more of those stories come out. Again, you said something very pertinent, saying those stories can't be perfect, right? And the expectation from those stories to be perfect, to be held up to some kind of intersectionality credit score by Janta at large. I mean, sure, okay, that's something that will continue to happen, but I think creators should take heart at the fact that more of these stories are coming out. They are absolutely wonderful.
Sorry, just one last thing.
Sure, please.
Also, I think it's important for us to recognize that brands that do end up taking that stand early on,
right?
They are being smarter, they are being futuristic, because the truth is that as we evolve, as human beings, as people, we are going to go to a gender-free space, right? I mean, maybe, there's a huge way to go, but every single year matters. Like, for example, in the fight for sexuality and LGBTQI plus rights, right? It's taken many, many years. Brands have started supporting. The brands that started supporting it originally, they've become pioneers and they've made history, right? So I think brands that talk about gender, like, the Puma Proper Lady campaign.
Right.
It's a very interesting take on gender, and that brand has taken that stand.
It has.
Right?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's made a dent in the way people perceive women in sports. I mean, although Nike and Adidas have been doing whatever they have been doing, I think Proper Lady was the push that the space really needed, and has sort of a clarion call that's come out of it, right? There's also Whisper doing Sit in Proper with just reclaiming the way that women sit. Very, very interesting ways of reclaiming these spaces that may not often become the mainstay of the general conversation that's happening here. So, very interesting take on that as well. And I agree with brands that are taking these that are adopting these strategies in their communication, in the way that they develop product, in the way that they deal with employees as well. Our future
And like you said, the most important thing is to reclaim space, right? It's about really. It's like how I was having a conversation with a couple of. We were doing this. We are doing this photography exhibition, which is called Kinnar Ka Ki, and I was sitting in a conversation with Roshni Kumar, who's a photographer, and Shreya, and a couple of people from the Kinnar and Hijra community who we were interacting with. And someone just mentioned that, what is, I just want to be able to walk on a road normally, right? I want to be accepted as normal. Right. And it just struck me that in our own ways, we are all sort of abnormal, right? So we constantly, if you see, like, I am abnormal because I'm divorced. I quit my corporate job. I am a single woman who's living there are, if I start talking about the things that I'm abnormal, and everyone will have things that don't conform to the normal conventional idea of patriarchy. So actually the box is of these normal people who are 10% probably. Everyone is outside of this box.
How do we get those 10 people, those 10% outside of that box as well?
Outside of the box is the effort, right?
And solidarity for the weirdos, man.
Yeah, and do away with this term normal. Like, what the I'm sorry, like, language, you can edit it out, but what the fuck is normal?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this idea of being normal, idea of, being a woman, being a man, who decides that for you? Only you. Nobody else should have the right? So it's very important for all of us to understand that. And that's why, for me, utopia is when there'll be no labels. There'll be no need to say LGBTQIA+, because we have to stop. We will all start seeing people as individuals.
And we will get there with Anat's content. I am fully confident of it. I love the passion that you always had, both for the performance arts and for the cause of gender equality out there. Neha, absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you for the time. Before I let you go, there's this question that I ask all my guests on the show, and I'm going to put it to you as well. I don't see why you should be an exception. Can you give our listeners a recommendation, a piece of entertainment? It could be a movie, song, game, meme, anything that they should go back. That's something that would leave them with a question, maybe.
Yes, I think in the recent web series, and I don't know if anybody has not watched Fleabag. I think they definitely should.
Fleabag, I think, is the most recommended show on this.
I absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you for another one. No, I'm also like second most recommended. Also another one. Yeah, so I think welcome to.
I would love to recommend Amrita Preetham. I think we don't give enough credit to Indian women writers, and Amrita Preetham is a gem. I know everyone talks about Ismat, but Amrita Preetham, I think we should all read, because there's this beauty in her. There's this.
And where should one start?
So I think one should start with Rasidi Ticket for Amrita Preetham. So it's her biography. Right. And someone told her कि अरे तुम अपने बारे में क्या लिखोगी? Like, what will you write about you? It'll cover a revenue stamp.
Right.
Right. And therefore she named the book Rasidi Ticket. that this is her revenue stamp.
Beautiful, man. That's super punk and awesome.
Yeah, she's super fun.
Yeah, Rasidi ticket from Amrita Pritam. Yeah, that's Neha's recommendation. Once again, thank you so much. Lovely talking to you, and I'm sure my listeners got a lot out of that. I'm hoping you guys are left with a question in your mind. That's it on this episode of Storytellers and Storysellers with Neha Vyas. This is me, Vineet Kanabar, saying bye.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarayu Natarajan.
And I'm Alok Prasanna Kumar.
And we are the hosts of the Ganatantra podcast.
On this podcast, we speak to academics, social scientists, journalists, and activists to find out what's actually going on in Indian politics.
On this podcast, we stay away from personality politics, intrigue, and gossip, and instead focus on the data, research, and analysis that drives all this.
So tune in to the Ganatantra podcast, where new episodes are out every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
We are from the Open Library Project and we host a podcast called Paperback.
Paperback is a podcast where we engage with stalwarts and experts from various industries, suggesting non-fiction titles that contributed to their journey in a big way.
We've had guests like Anjali Rana, Dr. Marcus Rani, Dr. Swati Lodha, Ambi Parmeswaran, Apurva Damani, and many more on our show Paperback. Find new episodes every Wednesday on IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.